Hello, friends. Welcome back to the GallowgateShots YouTube channel. My name's Stephen Best, and this is Extra Time.
Hi everyone. You might have noticed I got that wrong. This is TyneMachine, not Extra Time. TyneMachine is this one. Extra Time is the one that Emil does with Jess. It's very good. TyneMachine, this one. TyneMachine, not Extra Time.
We're going to be having a look back at a fairly recent season in Newcastle United's history. This one being the 2009 to 2010 Championship season. I won't spoil it by giving away the ending, just yet at least. But I'm joined by a couple of well-informed, well-dressed, well-heeled, apparently what I've heard, well-hung individuals. I've got Matty Shuttleworth and Marc Corby. How are you doing, lads?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, spot on. Cheers for having us on, lads.
Lovely to have you both, lads. Lovely to have you both on. So, 2009, lads, if you remember, it was the year the Verve and Oasis split up. I mean, the Verve split up most years, like, to be honest with you. The big albums that year, for me at least, were Primary Colours by The Horrors, Humbug by Arctic Monkeys. Yeah, had District 9 at the cinemas, Avatar. Lads, 2009, what were you up to?
I was just moving to a faraway land called Newcastle from Hartlepool, making a huge jump to university. Obviously, we were coming off the back of a pretty awful relegation to football-wise, but I'm sure we'll get into that. Things were pretty depressing, but yeah, I was just moving into university.
I was definitely not listening to anything you've just mentioned there, Bestie, mate. I must be getting old because I haven't heard of some of them, mate. But as Matty said, and we'll get into it in greater detail, it was a pretty bleak time to be a Newcastle fan that summer, wasn't it?
It was pretty dreadful, like, yeah. The 2008-2009 season, obviously Newcastle came down with Villa and West Brom, who finished bottom, went through 5 managers. We had a court case ongoing because we'd lied to the manager, or one of those managers, obviously Kevin Keegan, who later received a canny little lumper because of it. Was it the worst season, lads, that you can remember being a Newcastle fan?
What, the relegation season? It was close. I mean, it was the one where it really epitomised the circus of Newcastle United. Literally just felt like every other week there was something to be laughed at, or we were getting laughed at for something. You know, the likes of Joe Kinnear coming in. You know, even when Alan Shearer came in, you know, it was like there was fanfare, but you didn't know whether it was the right choice or not, and there was so much going on. But I don't know whether that's the worst one or maybe the recent one with Steve McLaren. I'd probably say this one though, the previous one anyway.
I think for me, lads, this would have been the worst because it was everything that was going off behind the scenes. It wasn't really all about the football that year, you know, as Matty said. It was just turmoil, you know, Kevin Keegan, the situation with that. Then we appointed Joe Kinnear. And then just from then, it just seems as if there was a huge divide between the support and the club. And I don't know, I suppose relegation wasn't a surprise, was it? Because even though we had the players, we just didn't have any sort of togetherness or any plans, or, you know, and it just wasn't a surprise when we sort of limped out of the league, didn't we? And did we deserve to stop up? No chance. No chance.
I mean, I know we're going to go through, obviously, we're talking about the 09-10 season, but one thing I will mention is that game against Villa, like you've just said, limping out, it was just so pathetic. I remember that so well, and the Damien Duff own goal. And the only person who looked like he wanted to do something was David Edgar on the day, I think, who halved someone and got sent off. Yeah. But like, other than that, they just looked not bothered, forlorn. I remember Michael Owen just walking off, and obviously the less said about him, the better. But things ended up all right, though, I guess.
Well, just before we move on, the Villa game, I was down there, and there's obviously been a lot of tension, shall we say, built between the two supporters since then. Look, I think people need to get over it. It doesn't matter who we would have played that day, they would have given us abuse. It's as simple as that. And you know, Villa, Man United, Arsenal, Tottenham, whoever, they would have given us abuse that day. So, you know, personally speaking, you've just got to take it on the chin. Simple as that.
I agree with that, Mark, as well. I think it's one of those little things where you get a popular Villa fan too, kind of the Sob on a Time banner and the Anton-Deck thing. You're right, any ground, we would have done it to somebody as well, had it been, you know what I mean? It's not it's hardly a unique thing, is it? But you mentioned there, Matty, that how they limped out the league, the draw with, the defeat at Aston Villa. Contrast that with a 2015-16 relegation, the 5-1 win at home to Spurs last game.
Yeah.
You go into the Championship thinking, right, you've got a bit of momentum, you've got some excitement. This pre-season, I remember, and we'll go through some of the games now, it didn't start off too badly as it goes. They had the trip to Carlton House in Ireland. You've got Shola and Apple on a bike, so straight away, you've got legendary status immediately confirmed. That was the start of a good pre-season, or so we thought.
Yes.
Beat Shamrock Rovers 3-0, beat Carroll 7-2 back at the Reynolds Arena, whatever it was called then.
Yeah.
And then had a trip to Brisbane Road, Mark, Leyton Orient.
Yeah.
I've got look at the team Newcastle put out that day. You've got Habib Bey, Jose Enrique, Kevin Nolan, Colaccini, Stephen Taylor, Alan Smith, Joey Barton, Gutierrez, Martins, and Duff. Now that's a Premier League team, and all. Yeah, that they shouldn't be. They should be getting a result down there, shouldn't they?
It's a Premier League team, but a team of players who majority didn't want to be at the club, and the players that did potentially want to stay at the club, i.e. Damien Duff's come out recently saying that he didn't want to leave. He wanted to do his bit to get Newcastle back up. He wanted to right or wrong, and he's adamant that he wanted to stay. So it depends on what you read and what you want to believe, I suppose. But that set of players should never have been relegated on paper. But you know, it's a cliche, but you don't win football games on paper, do you? But yeah, the whole club. I mean, you've only got to look at it, lads. You know, Chris Hughton, who would, I suppose, reluctantly take on the managerial position at the start of the season. He was our 10th manager in 12 years. You know what I mean? Where's that's after having 5 glorious years with Kevin Keegan. You know, where's the plan? Where's the consistency? Where's the togetherness? And it was just, I think at this stage, 2009, was probably the worst point in my history for me.
It was a huge sink or swim moment, wasn't it? Really.
Yeah.
Especially this game. If you're going to narrow it down to one moment in time, there's been loads of stories about it, about what was said at full time. You know, some choice words, some altercations, saying who wants to be. If you don't want to be, then out the door. Now I will always remember Damien Duff coming out and saying that he was one of the first ones to nail his flag to the mast and said, "Yeah, I want to stay. I want to stay." He said it just after we got relegated. Him and Habib Bey both came out, and then both of them left. So I've always kept a little bit of a grudge against them. Whether, you know, they were forced out the door, I doubt it. But, you know, it does leave a bit of taste in the mouth when people say they want to stay and then they leave. But that's history.
It is. And like you say, like something had to change with that team. The players themselves weren't necessarily desperate, as Mark said. They're a Premier League team, but something was really, really wrong. And when you look at the players that left that year, you had Viduka who retired, David Edgar went to Burnley, Michael Owen went to Man U. Martins went to Wolfsburg, Bassong Spurs, Habib Bey went to Villa, Damien Duff went to Fulham eventually. Obviously played the first game against West Brom. Are there any of those players that you would, at the time, have liked to have seen stay?
Probably the ones I've just mentioned, to be honest. Bey and Duff, because I feel like, you know, they would have been decent Championship caliber players, especially Damien Duff. But the likes of Owen, you know, see you later, mate. Viduka, again, you know, it was past it, long past it. Had some okay performances for Newcastle when he was 5th. But, I mean, again, Obafemi Martins, would he want to play in the Championship? No. You know, David Edgar ended up having an okay football as well. But, yeah, probably just Duff and Bayer, really.
I think for me, lads, I think only Bey. I think it just didn't work out for Duff up Newcastle. It's simple as that. Yeah. Injury prone. And then he went on to have a really good career at Fulham, which is just sod's law, isn't it? But the only one for me would have been Bey, because I think Bey was quite consistent. He had that touch of class about him. And he wouldn't make my all-time 11. He probably wouldn't even be a candidate at right back, but he would probably be in your sort of your top 6 or 7 right backs in modern day, where you would think, yes, Bey was a good full back. But the rest of them, as you say, the likes of Viduka, his heart wasn't in it. Michael Owen's heart certainly wasn't in it from the minute he arrived.
He doesn't have a heart, Michael
Owen. Yeah. But I suppose the key was who we're going to keep a hold of and who really wanted to stop him in fight. And you could say that the right lads were going to take us forward.
But it seemed to be a good dressing room, didn't it? I mean, going back to the Leyton Orient game, you had, I think it's been said that Harper, Smith, Nolan, and Nicki Bute got a hold of the team and said, look, we're going the wrong way here. And obviously, you can't judge too much on pre-season, and results weren't that desperate, that one game notwithstanding. But we went into the first game, quite an emotional game. Obviously, Sir Bobby Robson passed away July 31st, having played with some distinction for West Brom, obviously managed Newcastle for a few years. probably the last great manager we had really up to this point. He said, hopefully. It's a bit of one of those moments, one of those JFK moments where where were you? I remember when I found out, obviously we knew that Bobby was on his way out. He'd been to that charity game at St James's, the England v Germany thing, and he was looking very frail and stuff. And obviously the Paul Gascoigne documentary kind of covers it fairly well as well. I remember I was there. I'd moved out to Norwich in the May of that year, and I started a new job for an electronic tagging company, and it was the last day of my training. So I went in. We'd done my morning, done my sat my exams and stuff. Went out for lunch and came back, and I was stood in this tight little room. There's about 20 out of it. And by this point, I was 3 weeks in. It's well established. I can't hide this accent, try as I might. And someone said, Bestie, Bobby Robson's died. And I remember the whole room looking at us and thinking, how do I react to this? I kind of cry. I would have been here 3 weeks, and masculinity was still quite toxic at the time. Something this isn't a done thing. But that first game against West Brom, you had the minutes of applause. You had the whole season really was a bit of a Bobby Robson kind of a tour almost, which we'll come to later on with the game at Ipswich. What were your expectations for the season? Because West Brom came down with Newcastle as well. Were you hopeful? Were you fearful? Did you have any ideas what was to follow?
I was a mix of emotions, to be honest. Obviously, coming off the back of that really bad season, you just don't know what to think. We've had that late Noreen drumming, and I know it's just pre-season, but you're thinking genuinely who wants to be here, and it was a strange one. I remember thinking, we've got West Brom away. I bet you they beat us. And I just remember thinking this is already a massive, massive game because it's sort of going to set a marker for the rest of the season because we're playing probably, and when you look at betting odds, the team that we're going to be up against for trying to get promotion. But whether we're going to be up and about there, I'm not too sure. So I was proper sat on the fence. I didn't have a clue what to expect.
I think for me, touching on the Bobby Robson death, it absolutely tragic for the club, wasn't it? Because the club seemed to stop still. Everyone was going to the ground and paying the tributes, and it seemed to be going on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I don't know. I suppose in a sense, a little bit of reality hit home. I think maybe those who did continue to keep their season tickets, or they were going to go to the games, maybe they just thought, it's still a club at the end of the day, and perhaps, Bobby's passing may have made people realise that, at the end of the day, it is only a game of football. It is only Mike Ashley. There is going to be a day when he's gone. Well, I mean, here we are now, 11 years later, we're still waiting. But you've just reminded me there, Bestie, because when you moved to Norwich, we also moved seats. Because me and you and the lads used to sit there 3 rows from the back of the Gallowgate, and then we moved seats into the sort of the middle of the corner, and we just thought, let's have a change. Let's go and get a better view of the game. But I think going into the West Brom game, I think one of the things that stuck out to me is I remember looking at the lineup and thinking Andy Carroll, who was unknown then. I think he'd only scored 2 goals at the time in the Premier League, and in Shola were strikers. I just thought, we're resting our championship hopes on these 2 Geordies, which was great in one respect, but it was also quite worrying because when you've lost someone of the class of Owen, well, let's be honest, his ratio was good at Newcastle.
Yeah,
I think
it was.
Yeah. And Viduka was a top class striker on his day. Obafemi Martins could play when he really wanted to, when he fancied it. And I remember just thinking, Christ, how far have we fallen overnight? But the actual game, if I remember rightly, I think that might have been the game that Tim Krul come off the bench and
Steve Harper got injured. Yeah.
Harper got injured. When West Brom scored, Shola kicked him in the head.
That's what I mean. Shola liability.
So Krul came on at half time during that game, and he made a really good. I watched the season review last night, which is why I've not got the light on because the bags under my eyes. I was watching for hours last night. And obviously Damien Duff got the goal there. I remember it was as I say, I was in Norwich at the time, and Norwich got relegated to League One the same season or the same day as we went down to the Championship.
Right. And
their first game in League One, they got beat 7-1 by Colchester.
Yeah.
And I thought, Christ, is this a harbinger? Are we going to go to West Brom and get an absolute hiding here? But obviously a decent result again. And because West Brom would be relegated, you don't really know how to gauge how they are either. They had a decent enough side as well, but the season, if you want, kind of maybe is more of a sign of where we're going, was the second game, Reading at home.
Huge.
Where the much maligned already Shola Ameobi managed to get a hat-trick. As you say, Mark, you were you had a decent view of that one because I think all three of them, the two of them were scored in the Gallowgate. Did that go anywhere to kind of allay your fears over the start of the season, or?
It was more so like it was going to the games out of habit. You know, it was strange because obviously I'd seen 4 seasons of Championship football back in the late 80s, early 90s, and the difference in classes, it's obvious straight away. Yeah. But I remember the atmosphere was flat. I think there was 38,000 there, so 14,000 went missing overnight. And I just remember, obviously, with it being on Sky, and I remember just thinking, oh, please, let's just make this 1 year. Because if we, stay down here for a couple of seasons, then it's just going to be a horrible period. But the actual game, I mean, Christ, Shola, what was it? Was it 2 and a penalty he got in the end?
2 headers and a penalty.
2 headers. And who I'm nothing but fickle, and what a great idea to play him up front.
Yeah. I mean, that was for me, like we've just talked about the West Brom game again, a marker for the season, but it was getting on paper one of your hardest games out of the way early doors. But this Reading game for me signified it. That was when I thought, you know what, we might be able to do something. Reading as well. Reading were no mugs then. They just came down from the Premier League, I think 2 seasons prior. So I just thought if we can get a result, and then we didn't just get a result, we hammered them. Shola gets a hat-trick, and there's that one bit, I think, for the second goal, the ball's going out, and Kevin Nolan chases it down. And I remember the crowd going, like, proper reacting to it. And they're already celebrating before the ball goes in. So he wins it, knocks it back to Barton, Barton whips it in, and he scores the second, and the place, like, went light. And it was, you were thinking, hang on, if they try this hard for the rest of the season, I know it's only we've got 2 games out of 46, we could have something here. And that was when I sort of thought, let's see what we can do. If Shola can score a hat-trick, then anything can happen.
I mean, Shola finished with 10 goals in 11 starts. Would you say he found his level that season, or do you think that's a bit cruel?
For me, yes. As a goal scorer, absolutely. If you look back at his career at Newcastle, I think he only had 1 or 2 seasons where he got above 10 goals, and I think this was one of them. I could be wrong there. The strange thing about Shola, obviously, you don't want to make it a Shola show, but his record in Europe is absolutely fantastic. I think he's the second top scorer after Shearer, is he?
Second, yeah.
After Shearer?
Highest, yeah. Yeah, I think he is. Top 2, certainly, yeah.
And you've got to give him credit. It's just unfortunate for Shola that he was sort of always, he was never number 1 striker, was he really? And towards the end. Towards the end of his time at Newcastle, I think there was a huge sigh of relief when he actually decided to call it a day, or he was released because he got sent off in his last game, didn't he, at Anfield? And I just think to answer your question, absolutely. If he had a good 4 or 5 seasons in the Championship, not for us, but for another club, then perhaps he would have been an absolute cult hero somewhere. But yeah, that was definitely Shola's level. And I forgot about that. I didn't realise how best. So 10 goals in 11 games is pretty decent, isn't it?
It's not bad. He got injured quite early on. He scored a hat-trick against Reading. He got Sheffield Wednesday. He scored as well.
The very next game, he scores against Sheffield Wednesday.
And then he was out for something like 15, 16 games after that. He really did miss a lot of football. A game that sticks out for me towards the start of that season was August Bank Holiday at home to Leicester. I think it was a Monday night.
Danny Guthrie,
I used to work when I was, like I say, living down there. One of the lads I worked with was a big Leicester fan. Elliot, he's actually on the coaching staff at Luton Town now. But so we had a bit of a back and forth at work about that game, and it was just a relief. But Danny Guthrie as well. Watching that video again last night, he scored some. He had a good season, Guthrie.
He had a fantastic season.
Goals.
Yeah, really good season. I don't know how many goals he's got. I think it must be at least 6 or 7. I remember him scoring a brace against Barnsley. Absolutely cracking free kick at home to West Brom, which is obviously a game we'll touch on later on. But yeah, he was really good. I liked him, and I liked him in the seasons following. And then he sort of just, as soon as he left us, he sort of fell off the radar and he'll never be seen again. I think he went to Reading and then played in India or something.
I think with Guthrie, if you think about the previous season when we signed Gutierrez and Colaccini, and Guthrie sort of come in a little bit under the radar, didn't he, from Bolton?
Was it not Liverpool? He was on loan at Bolton.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, I believe it is.
But yeah, when you look back at Guthrie's career, at Newcastle, this may be controversial, but he definitely had more of an impact than the likes of Aaron Smith. And the questionable one maybe with Joey Barton. Joey Barton's got a bit of a cult hero status, but if you look at his contribution to Newcastle, Danny Guthrie did far more. And this championship season's a prime example, in my opinion.
I think, Barton missed a lot of the season through injury, didn't he? But Barton seems to be a cult hero because he upset the right people.
Yeah.
He got Sunderland fans' backs up quite a bit, and both of them had a quite similar start to the Newcastle careers. Barton, I say start. Barton got sent off at Anfield, didn't he? When Shearer's manager. I remember Guthrie, I think it was his first home game at home at Hull when he broke Caleb Folan's leg.
Yeah.
Obviously that's going back to the start of the 2008-2009 season, but that was when things really started to unravel. That was a Cockney Mafia out, and that was kind of the tide just turned against Ashley so quickly and so kind of. It's never. It's never. The tide hasn't turned back. Ashley hasn't really done himself any favours in that regard, but I'm sure that's for another podcast. There'll be the day is gone. We'll be recording something, no doubt. Hopefully soon enough. But don't hold their breath. So this start of the season, we went on a 6-game unbeaten run, one of which I said I wouldn't do every game, but I'm kind of doing it here. Blackpool away was the first defeat, 2-1 at Bloomfield Road. But that game, Andy Carroll got his first goal in the Championship. You mentioned earlier, Mark, that you were a little bit concerned as to his first team status, kind of leading the line with Shola. Was there a point at which you thought, hang on, he looks like he's a real deal, this bloke?
No, well, he didn't. For me, he didn't really get going until the second half of the season, did he? Goal scoring wise, the calendar year of 2010, he was absolutely phenomenal for Newcastle. It's as simple as that. Look, you want your local lads to do well. I'm a firm believer in backing them. I think over the years we've given some of the local lads some unnecessary abuse. Paul Dummett, a prime example. But with Carroll, you could see there was a player there. He knew how to rough people up. As I say, he scored a couple of decent goals in the Premier League. I think one was at West Ham at home, and then Stoke away. So yeah, like I said, I think it was just more so the fact that I didn't think he wouldn't do well. It was more so the come down of having international footballers playing for you up front previously, and now you had two local lads, one whose career just seemed to just keep stalling, in a fresh-faced young lad but let's be honest, he went on to be an international. And little do we know, 11 years later, I'd still be trying to score goals for
trying being the operative word as well. He hasn't managed it since he came back, has he? But he's,
nope.
I mean, if you're looking at the season review last night, Shola and Carroll up front, with the kind of 2020 glasses on, it's not a mobile attack, is it?
No.
I mean,
I was going to say, neither's Kevin Nolan being the number 10 role either, is he? He cannot run, so interesting.
No. To you, Matty, we had a few young players in the squad that kind of, when you get relegated, you think, right, this could be a chance for someone to kick on. While the likes of Crow coming into the team, Thomas Kadar, Niall Ranger, and obviously Andy Carroll. Were there any that caught your eye that you thought might have kind of gone into better things? Or?
Well, gone out of better things, wasted potential. I mean, Andy Carroll had his injury problems. We all know that when he's fit, he's a fantastic player. He's really hard to play against, but wasted potential. Don't look as far as Niall Ranger. We'll probably come on to him. I mean, he scores, I think, his first goal for Newcastle against Crystal Palace. Scores away to Coventry. Doesn't score too many goals this season. But when he first came off the bench, I can't remember who it was against. I remember thinking, wow, he looks great. He looks quick. He looks powerful. He looks like he could change a game. And, he continued that sort of role into the next season. Look at, the Arsenal game at home, the 4-0. He came on and caused, ran riot. But, he obviously real waste of potential there. The rest of them, they weren't too great. Kadar ended up going on to, play international football for Hungary and stuff. But then you had the likes of, Ryan Donaldson, Ben Tozer. They'd make it on the bench every now and then. But other than that, no, not really.
Ben Tozer playing for Cheltenham now. We capped them against South Shields, weekend in the cup.
Right, there you go.
I just noticed that this kind of name coming from commentary. I thought, I know that name, Ben Tozer. Yeah. Expecting him to be like a fresh-faced 18-year-old. Forgetting that, I'm a decade down the line now. He's a shaven-headed lower league centre half, kicking blokes up a high type of bloke now. But he's had a decent career down there. I think he was at Northampton as well. So, 26th of September, we've already kind of mentioned this game, Ipswich Town away from home. Again, another emotional one in a season of emotional afternoons.
Very,
because of Sir Bobby's time at Ipswich, winning the UEFA Cup and a couple of FA Cups as well. Mark, you were around at that time, so I don't know if you'll...
I think you won it once, yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, they named the stand after him that day. Half of the world's Bobby Robson statues are located in either Ipswich or Newcastle. There's one on a golf course somewhere, and I think Lisbon have got one as well.
Right.
But that was the first Kevin Nolan Newcastle hat-trick. Obviously, one came the season after that was a little bit more kind of celebrated, shall we say. Have you got any memories of that game, lads?
I remember being on telly. I remember I had a gig up in Middlesbrough, and I only got to watch the first half. And like whilst we were travelling to Middlesbrough, I was like listening to it on the radio. But I remember, they played Frank Sinatra. I think it was My Way at half time, and they had like the team on from the Ipswich team. It was all really emotional stuff. And I wouldn't say I felt bad at all. I didn't feel 1 ounce of regret at the scoreline, but it was just, two teams coming together who absolutely love Bobby Robson, and then one of them just absolutely paced the other. And you're thinking, oh, right, it's a shame they couldn't get a goal, but it was a great, good hat trick. Ryan Taylor scored a trademark free kick. I remember Zurab Kishnishvili played in this game. He got an assist, and I think Marlon Harewood is at Newcastle by now. I think he makes his debut against Ipswich. Is off the bench. So yeah, it was a great game, great result.
I think just to share Matty's points there, I think overlooking the Bobby Robson side of it, I think that may have been the first time you actually thought we've got a good setup here. Really, I mean, we were playing on the counter attack, as Matty said. Ryan Taylor we knew he could do that anyway. I think he also scored a screamer down at Palace earlier in the season.
That was his first goal for Newcastle, yeah.
Was it? Yeah. And so that game was proper, job done, smile on your face, proper satisfaction. We're never ever under any threat. And if I'm not mistaken, Jack Carroll played on. He was on loan at Ipswich.
Oh wow! I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that was that. I think he probably got a boost from Newcastle supporters that day, shall we say?
Aye, but he was. It was Roy Keane was Ipswich manager at the time, wasn't it? And basically their whole team was either ex-Sunderland or ex-Man U player. So you had like Stern John, Carlos Edwards, Jack Colback. I've got it in my head. I don't know who he was. I was going to say Ben Anick, but now
was Darryl Murphy there by then? No. So no, I don't know if Darryl Murphy.
I can't remember.
I know he did play for Ipswich, but
yeah. But that was the last win for a while. They had a run of 4 without, including defeats at Nottingham Forest and Scunthorpe, both in the unlucky, which I've just scored was unlucky, third shirt.
Yeah.
You just said there, Mark, that the Ipswich game was a point at which you thought this could be a decent season. Were there any doubts coming in at that point, or did you think it's just going to be a blip and we'll get over it?
I think a few of my mates went to Scunthorpe. I ended up going to Forest instead. And it was either or. And a few of my mates went to Scunthorpe and they said there was a lot of fighting amongst the away support. There was a lot of, a couple of boo boys were coming in, and one of them, I think, would have been Jeremy. I'm sure, if I'm not mistaken, he got a lot of abuse that day. And it could have been possibly his last start or his last appearance for the club. I could be mistaken there, but that seems to ring a bell. As I say, I went down to Forest, and it was just a horrible game of football. It was just bleak. It seemed as if two teams were trying to cancel each other out. And it was as you know, Bestie, I put plenty of buses on over the years. It was a great trip with the lads, and it was just ruined by the game. I can't remember being too disappointed by it. I think you probably put it down to a bit of a blip. But at that stage, we had been beat off Scunthorpe and also Blackpool. So it's quite embarrassing more than anything else. No disrespect to them too, but I think it's a little bit how Sunderland are today when they're getting beat off the likes of Shrewsbury and Jarrah Roofing. And we hit that level 11 years ago. So I wasn't too concerned.
I mean, I think I was freaking out a little bit because I mean it's about the space of an actual month we didn't win a game. And obviously 2 back-to-back defeats and it being punctuated with that Scunthorpe game. I was getting a little bit worried. I remember the QPR game well at the start of that run. It was the only time I've ever bet on Newcastle, really. Took Newcastle to win and Danny Guthrie to score. We drew 1-1 and Danny Guthrie missed a penalty. So I decided from then on, you don't bet on Newcastle. But I mean, after that 4-game run, I mean, that next game I think was huge for Newcastle at home to Doncaster. Yeah. We win 2-1 and we score late on. It's a crazy game. One that I'll always remember. Red cards, penalty misses. And like I said, we scored 2 goals later on. Andy Carroll missed an open goal, then scored a really good volley. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we kick on big style.
Yeah, we had a 15-game unbeaten run, which at that point was a club record.
Yeah.
Right.
We've only ever beaten it once, and that was in this season as well. We'll come to later on. So as you say, they beat Doncaster 2-1, and then that's kind of, we're starting to hit that form. We beat Watford 2-0. Famously, Fabrice Pancrat's goal.
Yes.
Which is the Jetro Williams goal at Liverpool last season, to me, was just like a pastiche of it. Like, that was it pales, it's a shade of it. And then getting into the new year, you've alluded to it earlier, Matty, the West Brom game, the 2-2 draw.
Huge game.
Obviously, the Newcastle and West Brom all season were the top 2 pretty much. I mean, the both end of the season miles ahead of the rest. This was the game that followed immediately on from the death of Peter Lovenkranz's dad.
Literally the day after, wasn't it? The day after his death, I think.
It wasn't long after at all.
Yeah.
It was really touch and go as to whether or not you play. Such was the proximity. Mark, you mentioned earlier that we'd moved. I at this point hadn't been to a game yet this season because I was elsewhere. But the celebration of Lovenkranz's goal, if you remember, was right in front of the corner. A lot of the narrative that day was about that. I mean, I watched it in Norwich in one of the bars down Magdalen Street. And the narrative on television was really kind of, it felt like we were watching Peter Lovenkranz. I don't know if that was just my interpretation of it. Was it the same in the stadium? Could you feel it in there, that it was kind of the importance of it and obviously his celebration?
Absolutely. I mean, you've given us goosebumps there with your sort of introduction to that point. Yeah, I think it was one of those cases. I think Newcastle fans can be absolute arseholes at times and can be, really, as I said before, make people a scapegoat. But I think when the chips are down and people are going through a bad time, there was a proper coming together for them, and they were willing to score. And when you think back to the actual game, West Brom were the better side, without a shadow of a doubt. And if I'm not mistaken, the crowd dropped to less than 40,000 again. I could be mistaken there, but you're right. The game was all about Lovenkranz and his celebration and right in front of us. It was one of those ones where you could see he was looking as if to say, "You've totally carried me through this." And you've heard his interviews since. He's very, if you look back at Peter Lovenkranz, his time at Newcastle, he was decent. He wasn't spectacular. He was decent. I think he had just literally come back from injury a few games before this, so he was starting to get in a game. But when you think of like Shearer's record-breaking goal, you think of Andy Cole's record-breaking goal back in '94. There's moments for 5-6 minutes of the ground are just continuously singing about that player. Yeah. And I think in a different way, the whole ground had Lovenkranz back, and they were just singing that On a Free from Germany song. And it was like a celebration of his dad, which is quite bizarre to say because none of us knew him. But because it was played out in public, and because he had the balls to play soon after his father's death, you've got to give the lad credit, and he got to a valuable point at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it was at the end of like a 3-draw stretch. I think we drew away to Sheff Wednesday on Boxing Day, then drew it home to Derby County, and then, you've got West Brom coming, and you're sort of thinking, we're fighting with them now. It's like we know we're up against West Brom, so a point's a good point. And like you said, Mark, just to echo 2 things: West Brom were the better side on the night.
Yeah,
I think Ishmael Miller missed a sitter from 2 yards out and hit the post, but then just to echo again the goosebumps, Peter Lovenkranz. I remember being in the ground early when his name got read out. You heard this sort of, this wave of like, oh my God, he's playing, like we can't, like, everyone starts clapping, and then when that goal goes in, man, it was just that great. That was a header. I think Scott Carson just about gets to it but pushes it into the side of the net. What a time, what a time. And like Mark said, it just sang his name for about 10 minutes after, and it was just, like Peter Lovenkranz said, he was no good for anything after the goal. He said he just couldn't concentrate, but thankfully we got the point, and it was a big point as well.
It was a huge point, and similar to the one at the start of the season, it kind of stabilised a little bit. You think, right, we can get on from this. We'll touch now, if we may, on the transfer window in January, because we were talking about this too the week before we recorded this, and some of the business Newcastle did that season was really quite good. We didn't really cover the January and the pre-season window so much, but in January, Danny Simpson was made permanent from Man United. Wayne Routledge came in from QPR. Mike Williamson, who I don't think anyone had really heard of, joined from Portsmouth. And most excitingly, on a personal level, Leon Best came in. I remember we were driving to Amy's dad's. He lives in Cheshire. We were going along the 6, I think it was at the time, and I was just refreshing my phone constantly to see what number Leon Best was getting, because if he was getting number 9, I was turning the car north and getting in the back of my shirt immediately. Obviously, it didn't happen. He ended up with number 20. Didn't score that season either. Fitzhall and Patrick Van Aanholt came in as well on loan from QPR and Chelsea respectively. And Jeremy, earlier I mentioned, club captain for a couple of years. He left. He went to Turkey.
Right.
I did see which team it was, but I can't pronounce it. So from those signings, lads, who would you say was the pick of the bunch?
Ooh. For the one I got most excited about, and I think brought a lot of balance to that team, was Wayne Routledge. Because we had that great partnership on the left of Jonas and Jose Enrique. I didn't feel like we had. I think we were pushing Danny Guthrie out wide sometimes, and we didn't really have a really great right winger. And I just thought it brought balance, like two wingers. Wayne Routledge, of course, is synonymous with just doing well in the championship. I just thought pace excites. But Wayne Routledge for me was a great signing. But you said it midweek, and it was a good word to use for our business this season. Shrewd. We hardly had any money. We were just getting 1 month loan deal here, 3 month loan deal here. The likes of Marlon Harewood, as much as he wasn't the best of players, he still grabbed, I think, 5 or 6 goals. So it was we did some good business. But for me, the most exciting one for me was Wayne Routledge. Absolutely,
I think he was the most well known. He was a bit of a journeyman at that stage of his career. But yes, from a drop in fact, I can't even remember what league he was in at the time, but from to play in the championship, he was sort of, I don't know, a bit of a breath of fresh air down that right hand side. I did like Van Aanholt. I did think he was I think he only played about 6 games or so, but I didn't think we missed Jose Enrique when he come in. And it was a very, very, as Matty said, shrewd signing. We knew Enrique was going to be injured for a month. You got someone who was on his way up and hungry for game time. And it's funny about him because I really liked him at Newcastle, and I was a little bit disappointed we didn't try and make it permanent. But it's just a shame that he's turned into a bit of a tour rag in his career since, at Sunderland and in Crystal Palace. But one lasting memory of all that is I remember being up Newcastle one random Sunday, I think it was, and I was going into the gate, and all the new signings were sitting in TGIs having some bait. Well, the first thing you think, all right, they're all obviously sticking together because they're all new lads, but what the hell were they doing in TGI Fridays? And that's why wage structure was that poor, they could only afford that, But I remember seeing them all just sitting there, just wow. But I think when you get older, you're not that sort of, you don't get that starstruck as much, especially considering the rest of them, the majority were all loan signings. They wouldn't be here at the end of the season, So
you see, I'm getting starstruck. This was a season. Fraser Forster joined Bristol Rovers on loan for like a week, right. And then went to Norwich on loan. Obviously, right. We were living with a colleague of Amy's at the time, like a bit of a flat share, but we didn't have a very big fridge freezer, and like me and it was a big household, so we got Amy's dad to drop an old one off for it. And Carroll Road, there's a hotel right in the corner of the ground next to between the Barkley and Gerald stand, I think they are. And so we put Amy's dad Roger up in this hotel. So he gets there, kind of drops the fridge freezer off at ours. Goes to the hotel, has a couple of beers with him. So, here, Roger, we'll take bags up your room for you and all that. Gets in the lift, it stops. Fraser Forster walks in. Obviously, the Norwich have put me in this hotel as well. And me memory, he was just massive. Like, okay. I'm 6'5", Amy, my wife's 6'1", 6'2". Roger, Amy's dad's 6 foot plus as well. Fraser Forster was like, watch Scrooged.
Yeah, what was it like? The Ghost of Christmas. Yeah.
When Death gets in the lift, he's got to kind of tuck his head on one side, so it was like that. But I was starstruck, and here's me. I'm about 5-year-old then, Fraser Forster. I was starstruck by this massive teenager in the lift, and I'm stood there. Amy and Roger haven't got a clue who the bloke is, and I'm stood there going, "It's Fraser Forster, lad." Not a clue. Even now, they wouldn't be able to tell you who it was. Like,
it's a huge shame that his career never kicked on at Newcastle, because I remember being at a fashion kicks event. It was for Shea Given. He used to do a lot for Macmillan Cancer when he was up at Newcastle, and I remember being at an event, and the table I was on was right next to, you could see the kids. It was Tim Krul. It was you mentioned Toza. It was Edgar, Fraser Forster, people like that. And I was sitting like that, and Andy Carroll was just there, and I turned around, I had a bit cracking that with him, and I just says, we were just talking about the club and, players, and we're talking about the goalkeepers and the situation with Tim Krul, and I was going, is Tim going to be the number one, Steve Harper and all that? And he went, he says, no, mate. He says, he's the best keeper at the club. And he was pointing at Fraser Foster. And I went, really? He went, yep. He says, he's the best keeper at the club and everyone knows it. So I think they were just waiting for him to come through. But ended up cashing in on him. And, you could say, in hindsight, that was a massive mistake because he ended up having a really, really good career.
Yeah, he's still, I think he's gone back to Celtic now, hasn't he? But he's had a couple of goals there. He was at Southampton for a couple of seasons. He was their first choice. And I remember at the time thinking there was nothing between them, really. Krul and Forster for me. I mean, watching from the outside, I couldn't really tell which one was going to have the better career. So, to be fair, for a couple of seasons, I thought was excellent. I think that some of the abuse Krul gets is a little bit harsh, I think. I mean, he did tail off towards the end, but excuse me. But yeah, I think it was a decent keeper. So the next game after the January transfer window was the one game this season I actually managed to attend. And even then, I missed the first 2 goals because it was the first time using the card, and I was totally out of practice. It was Cardiff at home on a Friday night.
Yes.
It was the last game, like the last win of the 15 unbeaten run. All 6 January signings played.
Wow.
If that was going to be an indication of the kind of impact they were going to have. And I missed, I think, Andy Carroll's first and an own goal.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, to see it for me, that I hadn't seen it firsthand. I'd watched every game seem to be on telly. Was my memory of it. I'd sneak my telephone into work and watch Sky Sports on there just because I knew I'd get the game on. But that felt like we were just going to start hammering teams at that point to me. That's when it became like a holiday almost.
Yeah, 5-1 we finished, didn't it? Lovenkran's got a brace, Carroll got a brace. Yeah, I remember it well. Again, Cardiff, no mugs really. I mean, they were a tough team. But to beat them and beat them comfortably. Again, it was just it seemed like every other game you come up against a team, and as soon as you scored 1 or 2, you could think you could get a hatful.
My lasting memory from that is the atmosphere around the town, because it was a Friday night, wasn't it? And it was on Sky. And I remember getting up we met in, I think it was the 4th. And I remember the atmosphere was just electric. You could sense everyone was just, literally must have finished work and went straight on the drink. And I think the good thing about Friday nights is as you get older, you appreciate them because you've got your full weekend ahead of you. Do you know what I mean? So when people moan about Friday night football, I love it, mate.
I love getting out of the way. Even if we lose, like Southampton a couple of weeks ago. Yeah. You're fuming for an hour, but then it's like, right, I've got me Saturday, I've got me Sunday ahead of me. I'm just watch football and not give a shit. I much prefer to play on a Friday night.
Well, I can't remember if you met us beforehand, Bessie, or whether you were sitting with us, but we missed the first 2 goals as well. And it was funny because when we were walking up to the ground, we heard a roar, and I didn't think it was loud enough, so I thought, we've conceded there. And then when we were literally putting the tickets to get in, the cards to get into the ground, we heard another roar, and I thought, that doesn't sound loud enough for a home goal. A bit like, the other year when Kennedy scored and there's that brilliant camera outside the ground where it's captured the first minute. Yeah. And you think, that's deafening that. But it was weird because I just thought that wasn't loud enough, we must be 2 down. And I walked in and said, no, we're 2 up. So and to be honest though, I was pretty drunk, so, But as Matty said, I remember Lovenkran's his second goal. Lovely. When he cut inside and just curled it into the bottom corner.
Yeah, across the floor as well.
Just perfect, top class. And I think from that moment, we absolutely battered them. And to be honest, I think from then on, it was just a case of when are we going to actually be officially promoted? I didn't have any doubts.
Yeah. I mean, following on from that game, you're just saying there, Mark, we started really putting teams to the sword. We Coventry 4-1 at home. Preston at home 3-0, Barnsley 6-1. Jonas scored an absolute screamer.
Yeah.
Brought the Spider-Man mask out for the first time in St James as well. Yeah. And then we played Borough away, and I know this was a game you were at, Mark. 2-2 draw. And watching the review again last night, they were going about the Tyne derby and all that. Is it really a derby?
It was when I was younger. The late 80s and early 90s. I think it was more so the fact that us, Middlesbrough and Sunderland, were pretty level. One would make one a decent cup run or get promoted, but soon be back down. And I think then it was the only really thing you had to look forward to was the derbies. But it's now I don't see it as a derby. I see it as a local game. But I work with Middlesbrough supporters, and Them see Newcastle as rivals, they see Leeds as rivals, but they hate Sunderland. So it's like where's the balance, and what made Middlesbrough supporters hate Sunderland? Because you would think what's happened for them to hate Sunderland? You would think they would hate us because we had a better recent history of the last 20 odd years or so. So to answer your question, no. I think, to be honest though, I think if I remember that day, we had it all behind the goal, had thousands down there that day, and again, it was a pretty end-to-end game. I think Stratton was the manager, and
all the Scottish players.
Yes,
he took them down from. I think it was Barry Robson and Scott McDonald scored for.
There you go. And to be honest though, when Carroll equalised at the was it Carroll who got the equaliser? I think it was at the end.
Yeah.
And I think it was more of a relief.
Definitely.
But I always remember that Middlesbrough unveiled this banner and it said Trophy Virgins.
I remember it. Yeah.
And it's like you've won one trophy in your history, and how can you be trophy virgins? And I just, this sort of banter, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. You know, it's like people forget that football did exist before 1992 and all that. You know, but hey, let them get on with it.
Yeah, it was the same game. I seem to recall that the Top Gear lads showed up in Newcastle shirts and started winding the Borough fans up.
Right.
I didn't know that it was only years afterwards I saw a photo, and I mean, I'm not that big a fan of Top Gear. Like, I'm not a Clarkson fan by any stretch of the imagination. Like, I prefer Kelly to Jeremy. Like, but
just going back to Gutierrez, if I can interject there, Bestie. You mentioned the Spider-Man mask. He scored against Peterborough early in the season, if you remember. It took a wicked deflection, didn't it? And I don't think he was.
It was a fantastic goal, though. I remember he took it from the halfway line, took on about 4 or 5, and he actually celebrated like angrily. He sort of was just like, yeah, whatever, don't care. Because I think he getting some shit.
He had, because after his debut at Man United, which was unbelievable the previous season, he didn't really get going. And but just quickly about that Peterborough game, which I feel to bring up. That was the day that there was hell on, wasn't there, amongst the crowd, because Mike Ashley had decided to name the stadium the sportsdirect.com/Stephen Thomas Best Stadium, hadn't he? And there was absolute hell on, and that was when the Get Out of Our Club songs starting to come back.
Yeah.
And if I remember rightly, for a lot of games that season, you had one pocket of the corner was singing anti-Ashley songs, but the East Stand would stand up and start singing songs supporting Newcastle. So there was a little bit of a back and forth, a little bit of a divide again in two pockets of the crowd. And to be fair, it's still there now. You know, you've got pockets of people who want to give the owner grief, where you've got people who just want to turn up and support the club or the team. So yeah, an unpleasant memory, should we say, at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right, Mark. You're going like kind of Twitter now. You've got people who, I mean, obviously they won't go to the games these days because of how the world is and stuff. But you've got people that boycott and say that if you go to the game, you're kind of financing Ashley. Some people take the kind of complete opposite, saying, well, you support the team. If you don't go to the game, it's not a real fan. And it really is. It's a bit of toxicity there. That you just don't like to say it, do you? Know? Yeah, something I noticed, I think it was actually the Peterborough game highlights I watched last night, where you can really hear the Get Out of Our Club song. And it's very, very clear. And here we are, like I say, 10.5 years later now, and nothing's really changed.
No.
So after the Borough game, the Beats Gunthorpe 3-0 at home. Then on the 22nd of March, another little bit of infamy. Matty knows where I'm going with this one.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
2 players got injured in training. Andy Carroll's fist and Stephen Taylor's face collided over, apparently, if you believe the kind of the tittle tattle, over a shared interest in a young lass. I've got on my list here. You can tell I finished this at 2 o'clock this morning. I've just got hardest player ? Underlined. So,
who got Andy Carroll?
Yeah, it's Andy Carroll. I remember reading apparently the season before in Zogbia and him had a falling out. Obviously there was a thing at Kevin Nolan's house where his Land Rover got torched and all that.
Yeah.
Andy Carroll's kind of. I was excited as anyone when he came back to Newcastle, not because I think he's brilliant. I think he's a good player, but he's the years haven't been kind to him. He's limited by injury, and his body's it's not starting to let him down. We let him down 10 years ago, really. But he's Andy Carroll's story is incredible. And when you think of what he's like, I saw mentioned compared to Duncan Ferguson at one point last night, which I thought was a little bit generous, perhaps. But the kind of mentality that the bloke, he's just mad, isn't he?
I think it's not a bad comparison. They're both huge units. They're both fantastic in the air. They're both strong and up for a scrap. To answer your question, though, I think you've already answered for us. I don't think anyone's harder than Duncan Ferguson. It's as simple as that. And a quick sort of, I've been reminded this week, actually, people were talking about Paul Bracewell, who I thought was fantastic for Newcastle in the early 90s. And he lost 3 years of his career due to a challenge by Billy Whitehurst, who was at Newcastle in the mid to late, in fact, 85 to 87-ish. And a quick story about that. Billy Whitehurst has always defended himself and said, I didn't injure Paul Bracewell. 3 of them came in for a tackle and he come off worse. And I'm thinking, hang on a second, because there's no footage of it. But yeah, people say, no, 3 people went in on Billy Whitehurst and Paul Bracewell snapped his leg. So three Everton players challenged Billy Whitehurst and he just come out of it unscathed. You know what I mean? So he's probably the hardest footballer of all time, to be honest. I would definitely read on him, Matty, if you haven't heard much about Whitehurst. I'm not going to. I hope he's not watching, but he wasn't a very good striker. Put it that way. But yeah, Duncan Ferguson. God, we could do a podcast on Duncan Ferguson alone, I think. But hardest match. Hey, at the end of the day, if Taylor deserved a clip, which let's be honest, over the years, sometimes he did deserve a clip. But hey, the next game, what happened? Andy Carroll's sleeves and the fans are covered. And he ends up scoring a corker. Doncaster, didn't he? So happy days.
Another kind of a big game in the running for me was a nighttime game in Wompton Forest.
Huge
we
game.
Absolutely tipped it down. 2-0 win. Shola scored a cracking goal on his left foot, about 10 yards out, drilled in the bottom corner. And the bloke who was probably, in fact, was my favourite player at the time, got the second. Jose Enrique. Have you got memories of that night in particular? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I remember going into this game because Forest were the team that if anyone's going to threaten the automatic promotion, it was them, I believe. And basically, you looked at this game and thought, if we get 3 points here, I'm a massive pessimist, but I whisper, we are definitely going up. This was a game where it was like, if we win this, then we're pretty much up. We have to lose all the rest of our games, and they'd have to win all theirs. And it was a tight game. And like you said, bit of class from Shola. I think he spun on the edge of the box, sort of drilled it across. And then, like I say, a little move, little jink, Jose Enrique, and he sort of like it was a strange angle. He puts it in and takes off his top, and he gets a massive pile on. And I just remember being so happy, so relieved, and just buzzing to see Jose Enrique score because he was quality that season. He was so good.
I think one of my memories of that game, or probably in later years, is Enrique. I mean, I think it's very, very unfair that he come back and got loads of abuse. He was right. He got it wrong over Newcastle will never be a top 6. And yes, the fans are going to jump on that and give him loads of abuse. And it was hilarious when he ended up in goal. But we beat them 2-0. Andy Carroll was substituting and told Dalglish to fuck off. I didn't like Kenny Dalglish as a manager. Craig Bellamy also got substituted that day. So everything was going in our favour, that particular day. But I think when you look back with Enrique, he was right. They were all right. Joey Barton was right. The club was amounted to nothing. They didn't have any aspirations to kick on under Mike Ashley. And again, we've mentioned it a few times on the podcast, lads. Here we are today, and nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. And just to conclude on Enrique, I think it's really nice now to read. He's really acknowledging his time at Newcastle. His tweets, and he's had a few recent podcasts and. I'm going to mention a rival podcast too. We interviewed him. He was absolutely fantastic, absolute gentleman. Couldn't have done enough. Couldn't have given any more of his time. And I just think again I mentioned players who might make your all-time 11 selection. Enrique would definitely be in the top 2 or 3 left backs we've had, certainly in the last 30 years or so. He's no Johnny Beresford, mine, but hey ho.
Who is? That's the thing with John Beresford. But you mentioned earlier about my Liverpool game, where Jose Enrique ended up in goal. He ended up in goal, of course, as a result of Pepe Reina having a bit of a nudge at James Perch.
Yes. Which
is quite nice because this Forest game, I thought James Perch was brilliant. Mark Gutierrez, I thought he was excellent. And in my head, it might not be the case, but in my head, that was the point when Newcastle thought, this could be a player. This, and obviously signed him that summer.
Yeah.
But I remember watching that game thinking we're getting no change out of this ball whatsoever. But yeah, for the Jose Enrique goal, the thing that sticks in my mind is that he's got to put a soaking wet shirt back on, and there's no worse than that. Like it was tipping. It was Brown because he obviously been on a deck all game. But I agree, him and Gutierrez, I'll go on about this all the time. Like the way they linked up. I mean, the championship season for me was the making of a lot of players. It was kind of the making of Nolan at Newcastle, Gutierrez, Colaccini, Jose Enrique. Kind of, I think that maybe it's almost like a year off. Like you've got 46, not friendlies, but games against, let's be fair, a lower standard of opposition where you can kind of get comfortable in the team and the surroundings, and maybe assert yourself a bit more. And I think those players certainly did that. Andy Carroll as well. I think that was the real start of his career.
Changed Alan Smith as well. He came in as a striker. He came in as a striking option, and then we all of a sudden were playing him centre mid alongside Nolan, or maybe alongside someone Nolan a bit further forward. And I think Alan Smith had a great season, understated, never scored a goal for Newcastle. I remember him missing a sitter against Swansea, which I was gutted about, but he became the central midfield and sort of like general, and it was well thought of, especially well from me anyway. And he ended up being the one who would eventually lift the trophy with Nicki Bute.
Yeah, he was captain. He captained something like 26 games that season. Nicki Bute was club captain, but it was his last career. But wasn't obviously he retired at the end of the year, so he had injury problems, but apparently again. Going back to the kind of the interviews the players gave at the end of the season, Nicki Bute was a massive part of that dressing room that season. Do you think it was a bit of redemption for him, Mark, after obviously quite famously snubbed the fans after the semi-final at Cardiff against Man U, and he wasn't very well regarded for a long time, went on loan at Birmingham, didn't he?
Well, it depends which story you believe. I've heard that Nicki Bute is a really top-class lad, and he'll apparently, you're talking about hard footballers, apparently he's a hard man. He'll not take shit off anyone, which is interesting. Because you look at him and you don't think he amounts to much. But no, I think there was no way back for him after the Man United, because again, Newcastle supporters love a scapegoat, and that performance down at Cardiff when we got beaten in the semi-final was dire, but it was disgusting. But bear in mind at the time there was all the turmoil with Graham Souness, where he was clashing with Laurent Robert, so he reluctantly played him. He had Dyer and Boyer were suspended, I think, for that game, so we had lost two of our best players. And, we'll put the blame on Nicki Bute due to him not acknowledging the supporters, which is shit, let's be honest. But that day, if I remember rightly, only Stephen Taylor really did. You know how Stephen Taylor used to do pretty much of a lap of honour before he left the pitch, and he was young, and he did that. But it was more so the stories of him having a laugh and carry on with Alex Ferguson. And even if it was just a split second, I think a lot of people probably thought, timing's wrong. So there was no way back for him. But as you say, a year at Birmingham, it might have been even under Steve Bruce. Would it have been? Possibly.
Very possibly, yeah.
And then it was the 2 goals in the pre-season game. I can't remember. Was it Villarreal or something like
Villarreal, that? 3-1 down, 3-3. Yeah.
And that was it. From boos to cheers, and he never looked back. And as you rightly say, though, he was a bit poor player this season. I think his legs had slowed down. Alan Smith was probably turning into a player like Nicki Bute, who would put a tackle in. And then you had Nolan who would sweep up and score the goals. So he did well. I think he is regarded quite highly by a lot of people who end up having interviews with him and really, really getting to know him. I don't think he's a prima donna. And let's be honest, he's won everything in the game. Part of that class of '92, etc. But apparently he's very approachable and he's a decent lad, and he speaks very highly of his time at Newcastle. So fair play to the lad. He turned it round. And he lifted the trophy and walked away. So, fair play.
Yeah. He was a player I was always had a little bit of a poor opinion of because of his thing with David Batley in the 96-97 season, sorry, on halfway line. Right, lads, I'm conscious that it's 5-12. I've got about, I reckon, quarter of an hour left to do with this. Do you want to keep going, or?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, we may as well just get it done, eh? We'll get it done.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Like, we'll probably be 2 or 3 now down by that point anyway. I just seen he's dropped Jeff Hendrick as well.
Yeah.
So we're on Nicki Bute. Right. So the next, the kind of the home game that didn't seal promotion because we were up regardless. But Sheffield United, a 2-1 win at home. And I looked through the team. Mark mentioned earlier on about how it was a Premier League team and kind of in personnel, but maybe it's not in attitude. Of the team that beat Sheffield United there, only Simpson, Williamson and Routledge were new that season. And yet it felt like a total refresh. Who does that come down to? Is it down to the work that Chris Hughton did, or is it the senior members of the dressing room, or why do you think this body of players that was ostensibly very, very similar to the one that got relegated managed to kind of turn it around so well?
It's got to be both. I mean, Chris Hughton, I think he let a lot of the lads, crack on. You got your dressing room generals like Nolan and Smith. Hughton, of course, played a great part in it. But the reason it seems so fresh is, like we've spoke about earlier, some of these players, we didn't see this side of them in the Premier League when they were there. The likes of Colaccini just seemed like people were calling him a clown and stuff. And Gutierrez, we didn't see anything from him. Enrique was injured. Kevin Nolan and Ryan Taylor came in late on the January. So as much as there were players from the previous season, we were finally seeing them doing stuff that we'd never seen them do before. Kevin Nolan scoring goals, Gutierrez, Enrique even chipping in with goals. And that's why it seemed so fresh. And then you bring in the three new lads, and it just creates this team that we've never seen before, even though they were there the season prior.
I think Matty's hit the nail on the head regarding Chris Hughton. I can't remember being particularly pleased that he was appointed. Obviously, he was interim for a while, wasn't he? And then he got appointed, yeah. And I think that might have been the time when we lost the two following games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was October before he was made.
Sod's law. But no, I think from a football perspective, he lined that they were well drilled. We're really conceded. I think we might have. I could be wrong here, Bestie, but that could be a season where we might have broke a record of clean sheets. I could be wrong there. But we seem to have players who would step in and do a job, and they didn't look too phased. But I think he treated them as men as well. He treated them as, look, do what you've got to do off the football pitch. Obviously you had the likes of Carroll got into naughty business and Taylor, etc. But one funny story, you'll know Stephen Dolan. He was through Jesmond one night with one of his numerous dates, shall we say, and he was sitting in a bar, and Andy Carroll and Kevin Nolan was sitting there, and the last I said, "Oh, it's Andy Carroll and Kevin Nolan." Dolan's not fazed by anything. He's a Newcastle fan, but he's not a fanatic, and he just says, "All right, happy days." Oh, can you go and get their autographs? So Dolan being Dolan, he had a £20 note. That's the only thing he had on him. He went, "All right, lads, can you sign that? I'm going to give it to the bin." And Kevin Nolan apparently stood up. He went, "Put your 20 quid away," went to the bar, asked for a till receipt, and also got a round of drinks in. So Dolan, being a proper alpha male, sat there, "All right, well, cheers." So when Dolan was going to the bar, he was getting their round, and it was going back and forth all night. And then when he had a little bit Dutch courage, and he says, "Oh, sorry, let's go and sit with him." And he was going, "All right, lads, what's the crack and all that?" And then apparently Gutierrez walked past the window, and he went, "Oh, there's Gutierrez, time to come in." And apparently, I can't remember who said it, might have been Carroll. So he says, "You're joking, he never comes on the drink with the lads, Gutierrez." And I just thought, that's brilliant, that, just normal lads playing football. Fair enough. It's in this day and age, they're all supposed to be these super athletes and they're all nuns, you know what I mean? They don't do anything. But that's normality, and that's the way you should be treated. They're human beings at the end of the day. So if you go for a couple of cheeky pints on a Tuesday night, you haven't got a game on a Saturday. Chris Hughton got it right, and as Matty said as well, the balance, the hardcore of the leaders in the dressing room, it give you that sort of belief that things may turn around and kick on from there.
It did, and like you say, you kind of it's almost a cliche of having that kind of core of it's just good lads. I think it's something that happened when Rafa was manager. You mentioned how they've got to be super athletes, but he had the no dickheads rule where everyone's got to put together and you've got to be a bit of a team. I think that made a massive difference. Going forward in the season a little bit, I say, but getting towards the end now anyway. The championship was confirmed with a 2-0 victory at Home Park away to Plymouth. Now this was a little bit. I'm a little bit funny with this one because we were obviously won the trophy that day, but Plymouth got relegated as a result of it. And at full time, you can hear the Turmoil operator's got "We Are the Champions" on, and he's got I forget what it was now, but a very celebratory in that nature. How would you have felt had it been a League One at St James's Park and Newcastle got relegated, and your man's playing "We Are the Champions"? You'd be a little bit put out, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I wouldn't feel great, but I have always give Plymouth a lot of respect for that as well. I think they were already down anyway. They knew they were fighting a losing battle, so they sort of just respected it. I don't know. I've never really spoken to any Plymouth fans about that. But I just but fair play. I mean, they let them invade the pitch. There was no chew. It was a really nice celebration. You'd be forgiven for thinking we were at home almost. But yeah, I mean, if I was the shoes on the other foot, I wouldn't feel great about it. Like,
I think definitely not. But let's be honest, I think it's quite easy to get out of Newcastle's ground quick, isn't it? And if you really want to get out, you don't need to watch teams celebrating. Off the top of my head, I can't remember too many occasions, if any, that something's happened or someone's won something at our ground. Has anyone won a league at our ground?
Well, Liverpool's last game last season was, but we were spared that because of obviously COVID. Like, so
well, there you go.
If anything good's come in the pandemic, like, we haven't had to see Jordan Henderson lift the trophy at St James's.
That is a valid point. But wasn't that Plymouth game the time when the ash cloud was coming across from the
Icelandic?
I think it was, and I think there was a big hoo-ha about the fans wouldn't be able to get there. It's strange when I look back though. That promotion, as I said at the start of the season, it was right and wrong, and I just sort of ticked it off. I wasn't really celebrating. I wasn't really getting, we're promoted and all that. It was just right, okay, we're right or wrong here. Let's kick on and do it right. Where back in '93 when I was down at Grimsby when we beat them 2-0, I was on the pitch. I didn't get back home about 3 o'clock in the morning. Absolutely fantastic memories. Where this one, a little bit older, a little bit wiser, a little bit more knowledgeable, I would think. And I just thought, right, we've done it now. Let's see what happens next.
Tick that box, as it were, like.
Yeah.
Matty, you just mentioned there that you haven't spoken to Plymouth fans about it.
Mm-hmm.
I was at Glastonbury that summer, and it was the World Cup 2010 was on, obviously, and England played Germany in the second round. So they put a big screen on one of the side fields, and everyone pretty much on the whole site kind of poured into this field to watch the game. Obviously, it was shite, got before one, but I'm there with me, Amy, my mate Yussi from Norwich, and we're talking to these lads, chatting away and that. And the Coxie accent. So, Newcastle fan, I says, aye. I says, where he's from, lads? Oh, Plymouth. So I happened to mention that. Says, by the way, when they were playing all the songs at full time, they says, no, I didn't like that. Like,
fair enough. So, there you go.
But you wouldn't, and I'm the same as you, Matt. I've kind of got a bit of I wouldn't say I look out for the results, Plymouth, but I've got a bit of a soft spot there.
Yeah, definitely.
It's the polar opposite of what the Villa supporters did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's no happy medium. Villa supporters probably took it too far, but as I said earlier, which team wouldn't? We're a big club to knock, and was our relegation the biggest relegation in Premier League history? It probably was when you think about it.
Given the time we'd spent in the league, definitely.
Yeah.
The time we spent in the league.
Probably up there. I mean, obviously Villa came down with a few years later, but yeah, I mean Newcastle were how many years before this? 15 years before that, well, finishing second in the league and beating Barcelona in the Champions League, and it's within the same generation. Like it's a hell of a drop.
Yeah.
But the trophy was presented at St James's, a 2-2 draw against Ipswich Town. Again, I'm watching the footage last night. There's a certain ginger centre midfielder kind of dirty in his boots. It's St James's, I think, for the first time there, Jack Colback. So how does that compare, lads, with we've seen them lift the trophy since then against Barnsley a few years ago. How did this one compare with that?
This left a bitter taste in my mouth for literally 3 minutes. Because obviously I've never seen my team lift a trophy, and as much as it's just the championship, but it's that old, it's the old Division 1 trophy. It's that trophy with a lot of history. So once I saw that happen with me dad, it was like a special season, goosebumps still now, but I'll always remember that 2-1 up. And Jonathan Walters is literally 6 yards offside, and he gets played through and scores in literally one of the last kicks of the game. And honestly, I was fuming. I was fuming for, like I say, about 3 minutes. And then as soon as the trophy staff kept coming out, I was like, I'm not bothered. We're good. But in comparison to, I mean, that's probably one of my favourite days at St James's Park, the one under Rafa. I hate that situation where, you're waiting for people to hear what's happening at another ground. We've not been in that many times, but, I can remember some idiot shouted that they'd scored Villa and hadn't. So that was a lie. But then when it happened the second time, you were looking around, saying, is it true? Is it true? And there was a guy, old-fashioned wireless radio. Yeah, they've scored. And that was one of the best days ever. So I'd prefer the one against Barnsley on the last day under Rafa. But this one was just as special because it was the first time we've had to do it.
I think Matty's made a good point there. When you look back at Rafa's time, you've genuinely thought this was the start of something massive. Yeah. Whereas with this, as I said before, we really didn't know we knew we had a good set of players, but we really didn't know what was going to happen next. Perhaps if we had to beat Ipswich to win the league, and we end up getting presented with a trophy afterwards, it would have been a lot more memorable to me. But yeah, I agree with Matty that Barnsley game was absolutely incredible. And I remember the celebrations around the town afterwards. It was like we had won a cup or won the Premier League. It was really, really enjoyable. But I mentioned the 92-93. That's number one for me without a shadow of a doubt, because you just knew things were kicking on. Well, Rafa's a close second because of you thought it was going to kick on. This one, I still see it as I've mentioned it before, right and wrong, and that's how I see this season. As enjoyable as some of the games were, and a lot of players stood up and were counted that season. But yeah, I mean, the last game was a QPR. That's just a party, isn't it?
A certain Mr. Peter Ramage got sent off as well.
He did, I
think.
My headphones have died.
Was that the game? The game Steve Harper was dropped, wasn't he? So Tim Krul to get an appearance, and which I find baffling, because why would you not want to have an ever-present record in a promotion-winning campaign? If I was Stephen Harper, I would have put up a fight there.
Did Tim Krul only play the West Brom game? Like, did he not play?
He come on as a sub, and that was it.
Right. Okay. Wow. Because I mean, I always have this feeling that this is when he first starts. You've usurping Steve Harper. Obviously, he plays. I mean, Steve Harper must get an injury the following season, because Krul definitely plays a lot more games under Hughton / Pardew.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he played in the cup games. Obviously, we played very weakened teams in the cup games. We mentioned West Brom there. They battered with 4-2, didn't we, in the FA Cup, and I think it was Peterborough knocked out with the League Cup. Pretty bleak when you think back about it, but that wasn't important, was it? It's a horrible saying, concentrate on the league, but we had to that season.
Yeah,
we had to, and it worked. But yeah, good times.
I think what you said earlier, Mark's right about it was just get the season out of the way, finish. Or basically the 21st team in the Premier League, but it was kind of just a case of getting up. I mean, we ended up finishing on, after that QPR game, excuse me, finished on 102 points, 11 points clear of second, which was West Brom, who were, again, however many points ahead. I think Forest finished third. I've not got it written down. Obviously, Blackpool came up through the playoffs. A bit of kind of any other business now. We've got Andy Carroll, top scorer, 19 in total. Kevin Nolan, 18. Lovencran's got 16. I mean, those aren't there's no one with phenomenal numbers there, but it's depth as well. Ameobi got 11 and 10 starts.
Yeah.
That's
the fact you've got 4 strikers there with double figures. That's massive. Yeah. Instead of relying on one person like a Dwight Gale to get 25, 30 goals, you've shared it about. So if there was an injury, you brought someone else in, and pretty much every striker we played, except for Mr. Best, but he did end up doing bits the next couple of seasons. Everyone just scored goals. Even like I say, Marlon Harewood came in, wasn't that great, but still managed to get 6-7 goals in a short spell. So we just scored goals for fun this season, and like I say, it was shared across the entire team: defenders, midfielders, substitutes, all doing the bit.
Yeah,
it was something I point out made a lot over the years was and you mentioned earlier how much an effect Routledge had in the team. That after the January window, just started to really kind of butcher teams. We went through the results there. There's a few 6s, a couple of 5s. There's absolutely hammered teams. It was a joy to watch by the end of it. But you're right, Mark, when you say about Steve Harper, played 45 games, 21 clean sheets. Give him the last game for me. Krul,
definitely.
It's just such a strange decision. I thought. I mean, he's 35-year-old as well, so it's not as if. I think everyone knew by that point that Harper had a bit of a funny season. Actually, there was a lot of mistakes made.
Yeah.
And I've always quite liked Steve Harper, but looking at the goals again, you think, wow, that spell with him and given what kind of dovetailing a little bit seemed like a long way away. Then I thought
the early 2000s, they were neck and neck for me, absolutely neck and neck. But given I think he ended up being an ever present in 4 out of 5 seasons, something like that. And for me, if Harper had any ambition, he would have left. He would have left. He knew he given was getting better and he wasn't. And again, there's certain footballers. I think I'm not having to go with Steve Harper here, but I am in some sense, because I think there's certain players get legendary status at Newcastle quite easily. But if you look at Steve Harper, he played nearly 20 years at the club, and he 199 games. I think it's something random like that. And towards the end, I don't know. I think he's one of these keepers who was outstanding at nothing, but okay at everything else.
Yeah.
And he used to take half an hour to take a goal kick, which used to piss everyone off, didn't it? But yeah, look, the right players. When it was a decent squad. The January window was very, very, very good, and as you mentioned there, Routledge, I think he got three or four goals. Final piece in the jigsaw in a sense, because we've got that balance down the right hand side. We had Gutierrez and Enrique all season left hand side. All our football was going down the left.
Yep.
But then when Routledge come in, it was going either side, and it gave with a balance. And as you say, 4, 5s and 6 instead of 2s and 3s. So yeah, good times. I look back on it, quite fondly now that I've talked about it. But it wouldn't be one of those where I rush out and go on YouTube and watch the season like Bessie did last night.
I didn't. The period I had, it wasn't on YouTube. I had to go and get my DVD out a lot, and I had to. I spent about 5 hours trying to get that sorted out last night.
That's commitment.
But as a finishing note, it was the last season that we had Adidas kits. Obviously, have you got any strong feelings about those? I'm a big fan of the one that Matty's wearing, the yellow one. It didn't go down well in all quarters.
Yeah, well, there's a funny one with this one. I'm actually, just on reflection of the season first. I mean, this was a big sort of personal thing for me because my dad had grafted his ass off for X amount of years, his entire life, and he finally retired, and he could come up and see me at Newcastle, in Newcastle, where I was living, only 45 minutes up the road. But we went to pretty much every home game that season. It was the first time we were able to do that. We then signed 10-year deals for season tickets. Whether I regret that or not, that's a different conversation. But I'll always remember him asking for this shirt. This is actually his shirt. I'm talking like he's not here anymore. He is here. He's only in the next room. This is his shirt, and he said, "Get me that shirt for my birthday." I was like, "Oh, Dad, it's not the nicest of shirts." Like he said, "I've had people ripping the piss out of me down the pub because of Newcastle being relegated, and we're wearing that shirt." He said, "We're going to win the cup. We're going to win the title, and I'm going to walk in the pub wearing this shirt, and no one's going to say a fucking thing." And that's exactly what happened. And so now this shirt has like massive sentimental value, and that's why I always like Adidas kits, because we've got more memories with those Adidas kits. More sentimentality, whereas the Puma ones haven't been that great, and the years that we've had in them haven't been that great. So yeah, I much prefer the Adidas ones on a sentimental and aesthetic view.
I think I watched your podcast about the strips the other day. It's absolutely phenomenal. Encourage anyone to watch that. And I think looking at the one right behind you, Bessie, the home one, the more I look at that, the more I think that's just absolutely beautiful. You know what I mean? The sort of the collar. The
Central badge. I like the Central badge as well.
Badge. The sponsor's not over the top. The one Matty's got on, I certainly wouldn't go out on nightclub with that on. I might the home on. But no, the funny thing is about the yellow strip. If Newcastle were in a decent position at that point, the fans wouldn't have kicked off about it.
Yeah.
Because it's a sign of the times, like, oh, we're relegated. Oh, look at the state of that strip. Negativity brings negativity, and Matt looks pretty decent with that top on. So thanks, he's bringing it back. He's bringing it back to life.
Yes.
The old banana split, I think it was known as.
That's why I'm not wearing mine, because you've got a young fit lad wearing it there. And I'm thinking, if I'll be able to get in that now, you have to put out a bit like so.
Fantastic.
But lads, it's been lovely catching up. It's been a nice way to spend a couple of hours. Thanks very much for your company this afternoon.
Pleasure.
Hopefully see you in person before too long.
Yes, brilliant.
So lads, good stuff. Thanks for your time, lads. Cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye now.